that is a direct violation of the First Amendment, the most important one, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And the government knows, because they want this to be a way to open the conversation, a way to erode the First Amendment protections, first for non-citizens, then they will move to recently naturalized citizens, then they will inevitably move to natural-born citizens. All right. We're going to get to the news now because there's a lot to talk about, okay? There's a lot to talk about. Obviously, we're going to start off with the Supreme Court of the United States, which once again came out with a decision, this time 7-2, not unanimous, because, you know, that's also concerning in and of itself, demanding the halting of deportations of Venezuelan migrants in Texas. Now, will the Trump administration follow through on this order? What the language looks like within the order. These are things that matter. Now, the reason why I say that is because the previous unanimous decision, the Trump administration used as an opportunity to test the waters of I guess, legalese, saying, well, these guys did not want effectuation, they want facilitation. And if the demand from the Supreme Court is facilitation, we can kind of start the process of facilitation without actually facilitating the return of anyone that is falsely deported. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But let's take a look for this new decision, and I'll talk about the old decisions as well.
Overnight in the immigration battle, the Supreme Court acting on an emergency appeal from the ACLU involving potential new deportation efforts. Our senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang, is live for us in Washington with the latest now. Good morning, Selena.
Hey, good morning, Gio. The Trump administration's battle with the courts is rapidly escalating. The Supreme Court is again weighing in on their deportation plans as Senator Chris Van Hollen fights for the release of a man who was mistakenly deported to that notorious prison in El Salvador.
Overnight, in a temporary move, the Supreme Court blocking the deportation of Venezuelan migrants held in Texas under the Alien Enemies Act, a centuries-old law that provides little to no due process. The court ruling on an emergency appeal from the ACLU, directing the administration to pause the deportations until further order of this court. The ACLU saying they're relieved and that these men were in imminent danger of spending their lives in a horrific foreign prison without ever having had the chance to go to court. This comes amid the showdown over Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a migrant who was mistakenly deported to the infamous Secot prison in El Salvador. Senator Chris Van Hollen arriving back in the U.S., recounting their face-to-face meeting.
He was traumatized by being at Secot and fearful of many of the prisoners in other cell blocks.
Van Hollen says Salvadoran officials gave
Dude, the stuff that the right wing, the stuff that the right wing administration and right wing influencers have been doing surrounding the story unironically resembles like the shit stirring and the smear, the smear campaigns that like online lolcows engage in. It is kind of wild experiencing that as someone who both covers the news and has a more professional understanding of critical media analysis, and as someone who also routinely is the target of this like bottom of the barrel type like smear campaigns that initially were focused on, I don't know, random dark corners of the internet, like anonymous forums like on 4chan or the doxing forum, which I will not name. And now because of Twitter, because of the Twitter purchase by Elon Musk and the 4chanification of Twitter, that has totally made the American government behave in the exact same way. There are photoshopped images, for example. It's kind of crazy that the Nayib Bukele administration in El Salvador and the MAGA movement across the board is engaging in some of the craziest ways to just lie actively. This is the hand of the man that the Democrats should feel should be brought back to the United States because he's such a fine and innocent person. They said he's not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. And two highly respected courts found that he was a member of MS-13, beat up his wife, etc. I was elected to take bad people out of the United States, among other things. I must be allowed to do my job, make America great again. This right here is so insane because, like, this is the worst, the fakest, most ridiculous Photoshop I have ever seen. I think they're trying to not say his fingers have MS-13 on it. They're trying to say that these images correspond to MS-13. Okay. But what's interesting about this is I don't even know if he has these finger tattoos. That's number one. And number two, they were so not MS-13 that not a single one of these tattoos were dinged initially. Not a single one of these tattoos was initially brought up in the first police report or the subsequent deportation reports. Because ICE fills a report to be like, these are the tattoos that we found on them to consider to be MS-13. And it's also wild because, this is New York Post runs an article suggesting the tattoos of Obrego's hands are a sign of MS-13 affiliation, using a tweet from Captive Dreamer, an actual Nazi, as a source. This is Jesse Singal criticizing it. Libs are even freaking the out about this. Right-wing liberals are freaking the out about this. Bill Kristol is writing about how insane this is. Like, in the previous Trump administration, you had liberals be like, we got to abolish ICE. Second Trump administration, you have liberals writing articles about assassinating high-profile politicians, and you have Bill Kristol talking about the abolition of ICE. I don't know where we go from here, but I am at least a little bit glad that, like, even the most right-wing neocon reactionary freaks that still have some semblance of, like, institutions and the defense of institutions are recognizing that there is a need for change. This doesn't mean that all of these guys are genuine. This does not mean that these people are your allies right now, or they will remain your allies. But the reality of the matter is, I think there is a change in the overall vibes and the overall attitudes from the American public. I'm hearing, like, the very fact that, I can't wait till it happens, or someone should do it. Like, statements like that, vague statements like that, are being pushed out openly on the timeline by liberals. Okay. These are not like radical extremists. These are not radical extremist leftists saying this kind of stuff. It's actually your moms and your dads. It's like accountants, nurses, teachers, people that you would never expect to say things like this. It is truly a wild time. And I think that the Democratic Party, of course, is not seizing on the moment and the anger and resentment, but I will say this has been my greatest moment of vindication, for the record. As Waifu Jenner Brent Mao says, you were saying a few weeks ago that normies don't know about the deportation regime. Has the Kilmar case changed that? Yes. What did I tell you? This is not even just like my moment of vindication for the past year. This is my moment of vindication for the past decade. I always have stressed the importance of Democratic politicians actively making a bigger deal about some of the awful things that the Trump administration or any administration is doing about migrants will inevitably cause media coverage around the atrocities, and that will inevitably cause the American public to very quickly turn around and go, this is unacceptable. I've been saying this for years. I said this in the Biden administration, in the beginning of the Biden administration, where I openly stated early on, April or February of 2021, when the Biden administration was using Customs and Border Patrol to, whip Haitian asylum seekers at the border, I was saying they cannot do this. They have to abide by the campaign promises that they made the first 100 days of immigration, like actively trying to create pathways towards amnesty. And if they don't do that, and if they cave and capitulate the right-wing framing on this issue, which I expected they were going to do, which they of course did, that the entire conversation would flip to the right and Americans would become incredibly reactionary on the issue of immigration, which happened. And in that exact time frame, I kept repeating over and over again, this is dangerous. This is very dangerous, both because this administration, the Trump administration, if they come into power, will actively seize on the right-wing white nativist sentiment and will do a cruel deportations regime. And if the liberals don't actually push back and don't counter message around this issue, Americans will be asleep. And for the first couple of months, Americans were indeed asleep. But the Kilmar Abrego situation changed that discourse. Why? Because the admin, due to one immigration attorney of the federal government and his moment of honesty, his brief moment of recognition and honesty, which he was subsequently fired over, okay, where they admitted that they had made a mistake in deporting Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident, to El Salvador, despite previous court orders not to deport this man to El Salvador. They made a mistake and they admitted that mistake, and that all of a sudden was a pivotal moment where people started focusing on this issue. And then Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, as I said, as I supported over and over again, actively pushed the issue and put his body on the line, flew directly down to El Salvador, and this became an even larger issue of note. It became an even more worthwhile issue. More media coverage around it, more attention being put on the Trump administration's erosion of due process, more focus around deportations and unjustifiable deportations in general. And this, in and of itself, is the reason as to why the El Salvador admin had to back away and get Chris Van Hollen, the Maryland senator, to visit Kilmar. I'm telling you right now, no, they didn't admit they were wrong. One of their lawyers did and was promptly fired for doing so. No, what do you mean? That's what I said. The administration's attorney accidentally, in a moment of honesty, admitted to a mistake. That was enough. That was the pivotal point. Do you understand? For years and years, I have been screaming from the mountaintops about Democrats doing exactly what Van Hollen should have been doing, okay? Or what Van Hollen has done. Make this an issue that people have to pay attention to. And the first moment that they seized on that opportunity, we are seeing changes occur. Do you understand? This is why I always stress the importance. This is why I always stress the importance of working with the allies we have that are in positions of power. Because Senator Chris Van Hollen is not, one of my favorite senators at all. He is not close to me ideologically at all. But he did the right thing in the right moment. He actually moved beyond platitudes. Okay? He moved beyond platitudes. And he forced people to pay attention. Because when you're a senator, you have this power. You have a bully pulpit, maybe not as vast and as large and as influential as the presidential one, but you still have a soapbox that you can utilize like this, especially if you personally go out there. Now, this doesn't mean that magically the situation will improve overnight. That's not what I'm saying at all. Okay? This is not going to magically change the deportation regime. And as I have said, they are actively, the Trump administration is actively moving to disparage Manuel Kilmar Garcia, in more dramatic ways, in more ridiculous ways. But this is a pivotal moment. This is a attitude shift. Trust me when I say this. Okay? Trust me when I say this. It's just beginning. And more people within the margins are going to change their perspective on this issue. They are going to come out and speak out against this. I promise. Especially since, where is it? This very moment right here is a pivotal one because it shows everyone that has been protesting that your anger and your protests do matter, that Democrats taking a principled stance matters. As I've said, they want to make CCOT the place where dissidents disappear without due process. We cannot let this happen. This is the first small battle in a much larger fight. Okay? Asman already falling for the tattoos hard. Dude, brother, when will you understand? He is a right-wing fascism mouthpiece, okay? The fact that he doesn't personally care about right-wing bullshit does not change that dynamic. He's not falling for anything. He's just spitting out and regurgitating right-wing propaganda. That's all it is. His goal here, for his personal goals, his personal ambition is clout and relevance. Not money, but just simply relevance. Okay? And he's getting quite a bit of that. He's getting a lot of love and he's getting a lot of relevance right now. But the way to achieve that is by just repeating whatever the right-wing dumb want to hear. Okay? It's not about being correct. It's never about being correct. It's not about like avoiding coming across as hypocritical or anything like that. Very few people that are that invested in the right-wing project care about that. Okay? He simply cares about regurgitating right-wing propaganda because that offers him clicks, relevance, and a lot of love from an audience that wants this bottom of the barrel right-wing propaganda, while also demonstrating himself as an apolitical centrist who seemingly almost always finds himself suspiciously on the reactionary side of every issue. He's genuinely trying to capture what he thinks is some kind of reasonable... Dude, what the f*** are you talking about? There is no reasonable centrist opinion on a false deportation like this. He thinks that he thinks that he can present himself as a centrist who is approaching this within the boundaries of reason and claiming that he's apolitical because that's what right-wingers do. What are you talking about? Tim Pool, for years, claimed to be a liberal. What are we talking about? Even after Tim Pool straight up said Donald Trump was going to win every state in the 2020 election, he still maintained this idea, this ideal, this optics, the optics of like being apolitical or a centrist or even a liberal, as a matter of fact. I'm just a liberal. I just seemingly agree with everything that Trump is doing. Please stop. It's just marketing. Some of you fall for the marketing pretty aggressively, I think.
Abrego Garcia, no information about why he was sent to the prison.
I asked the vice president exactly that question. Why is he here? Is he violating any laws in El Salvador? Do you have any proof that he's committed a crime? No. Why is he here? Because the Trump administration is paying us to keep him here.
President Trump lashing out at Van Hollen's trip.
I think you're talking about Dave Rubin and not Tim Pool. No, I'm talking about Tim Pool, but Dave Rubin is another example of this. When the I'm a centrist that's simply looking at this from a reasonable position shtick dries up, when that position dries up, they inevitably swing actively to the right. They will openly recognize that they're right wing, to the surprise of nobody. Okay, but it's the same grift. I've been doing this for 10 years. Do you know how many centrists I've seen? Jordan B. Peterson. Jordan Peterson was supposed to be a centrist, a liberal, Canadian, right? What happened? Look at where he's at now. Bill Maher, supposedly the centrist liberal. These guys have always done the same thing, and people keep falling for it over and over again. It's so shocking to me.
No, look, he's a fake. I know him. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad.
The Trump administration insists Abrego Garcia is a violent gang member.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm going to tell you some of the most insane things that these guys have done, both Nayib Bukele and also the Trump administration has done so far to lie about this dude, okay? He's a first-year smart apprentice, okay? Sheet metal and transportation worker apprentice, okay? Like, this dude is a union member. He's a union brother. He has an American citizen wife and an American citizen son with special needs. And the way that they are disparaging him in an effort to justify this deportation is instructive because they want to be able to get away with swaying the public opinion at a time when there is finally some pushback. They also don't want to show that they will cave and capitulate to any kind of pushback, no matter what. Has the union made a statement on this? Yes, the union has made plenty of statements on this, of course. His union was one of the first organizations that came out with a public statement. This is the opportunity not to celebrate, but instead to push even harder, as a matter of fact, to extend the conversation to the Mahmoud Khalil situation, to extend the conversation to Mosen, to extend the conversation to Rumeysa Öztürk. There are so many that are also being detained right now falsely, illegally, for a violation that the government is engaging in, an egregious violation that the government is engaging in, that is a direct violation of the First Amendment, the most important one, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And the government knows that these guys are simply being detained and possibly deported because of what they have done, what kind of exercising of the First Amendment they've engaged in, because they want this to be a way to open the conversation, a way to erode the First Amendment protections. First, for non-citizens that are legal permanent residents, like, documented immigrants that are on a pathway towards naturalization to begin with. Then they will move to recently naturalized citizens. Then they will inevitably move to natural-born citizens. Donald Trump is actively working on a deportation scheme for homegrown American natural-born U.S. citizens. I'm telling you right now, this is where it is headed. I have not been wrong so far, so heed my warnings. Okay? A lot of people are still kind of oblivious to the grand scheme here, the larger goals of this administration,
which his family denies. He has no criminal convictions and they've provided no evidence. Van Hollen says the administration is blatantly defying the Supreme Court, which has ordered them to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release.
Senator Van Hollen says that Abrego Garcia's case is about more than just one person. He says it's about protecting the constitutional rights and due process of every person who lives in America. Janae?
All right, Selena Wang there in Washington. Thank you.
I do need you to understand something here, okay? So Chris Van Hollen did this thing, and it saw some success. And as is the case, I will give you an analog from like petty grievances that online influencers that love drama and the smear campaigns that they engage in, to help you develop a better understanding of how devolved the current administration actually is, because they're doing similar 4chan tactics here. Okay. One thing that you always see is whenever someone like myself does something cool or whatever, the usual suspects will come out and immediately start a campaign to smear me. One of those was this one, ironically enough, when the Content Cop came out with iDubbbz. What did these guys do? They found like a tweet that I don't even remember tweeting about Diddy and deleted, I don't even know when, okay, to claim that I had purchased the Redactive software and deleted this like Diddy tweet or something. It was a major self-own in general. And obviously, a lot of people dunked on them. It's also additionally funny because the guy who owns the Zionist who owns the software, this privacy software, has quite literally gotten $1.5 million from P. Diddy. Ethan even shared it too. Yeah, they're insane. Nobody cares about this. Okay. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is not what happened here. The point I'm trying to make is that like this kind of low-hanging fruit, like this kind of like ridiculous smear, okay? This kind of ridiculous smear in and of itself is something that you normally wouldn't expect from any sort of serious administration. It reeks of desperation, okay? It reeks of desperation. When you recognize that you're losing the battle, you're just looking for anything you can to disparage the people involved, okay? Even if you're, I mean, you behave like an online degenerate stalker, and that's what the administration is doing with the tattoo thing, or that's what Nayib Bukele did. Okay, with this, hold on, this right here was the Bukele administration's attempt, where they placed these glasses with salt on the brim and a cherry to make it seem like he was sipping margaritas with Senator Van Hollen. Okay? Like, that is such low effort, such bottom of the barrel clown shit. Okay? Like, that was the first attempt. That was the first attempt to be like, see, he's having a great time. And you can see in his fake face, he's not having a great time. Like, look at him. Does this look like the face of a man who's having a great time? I mean, they bring up an old tweet. I don't think they want to go ban on past controversies law. No, don't focus on the shit that Dan Saltman is doing, even though he is like, infinitely closer to P. Diddy than I ever have been. I don't know why he even brought that angle of attack personally. But like the real point is I'm using that as an analog. I'm saying that these guys are behaving like 4chan trolls. That's the point. The administration is behaving like a rabid sociopathic 4chan troll who never leaves the basement. We are literally devolving as a society. Then they moved on. They moved on from the drinks to his tattoos, or they turned around and showed a point from this conversation where Chris Van Hollen looks behind, thinking that Kilmar's wife is to his right instead of his left. They literally zoomed in on it. They zoomed in on it to be like, he doesn't even know who Kilmar's wife is. Like, that was insane. Like, the shit that these guys are doing right now, is so deranged. They're trying to belittle Chris Van Hollen for the attempts and his achievement in this regard. And they're reaching for some of the most desperate shit they possibly can. Most of it is irrelevant to the point of contention, of course. But it's a way to basically engage in a war of attrition. It's very effective. No, it's not. It's only effective if you find yourself duped by any number of different things and you don't focus up on the main problem. And the media, luckily, has not caved into this. Okay, the media hasn't thus far given into this. One thing that they also did was bring up the domestic civil. The domestic issues that Kilmar and his wife had, right? Immediately they were like, see, he's a wife beater. It's like, bro, his wife is literally prominently on stage every day demanding his return. That doesn't make you question the things that you're going along. That doesn't make you question the things that you're presenting as like a reason to keep him in El Salvador. Not only did she file for a temporary restraining order, she never actually fulfilled the restraining order in any way. She never actually fulfilled the restraining order at all. She also had to give quotes to Newsweek about this, where she had to be like, "Listen, I was really worried and I guess quote unquote jumped the gun when I filed for this out of caution because of my previous relationship that was abusive, and we worked through our problems." And I never actually went along with the restraining order in general. We went to marriage counseling, and we're in a loving relationship where I want my husband to come back to the United States of America. So the idea that this is enough for enough justification for deportation is silly on its face, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter at all. They're just desperately grabbing onto anything and everything they can do. I'll give you another analog. It's like when the ADL recognizes that they have lost the battle, the propaganda battle. The ADL does not have any power here, any influence here in swaying public opinion because of Israel's atrocities. What do? They turn around and focus their attention and their priorities on increasingly smaller targets. After October 7, Bill Ackman was doxing Harvard students for writing in the Harvard newspaper identical pieces to the Haaretz editorial board that said October 7 is still directly the responsibility of Israel, which is true. It's a correct statement. And a bunch of Harvard students got doxxed for that. And Bill A. Ackman was running around demanding flesh, okay? A year into Israel's genocide, the public opinion has changed dramatically against Israel. And what are they doing now? They're going after like the Weather Channel for having a advertisement where one of the models is wearing a keffiyeh. So like the targets change and they get increasingly more petty and increasingly less consequential targets overall. But it's an act of desperation. Okay? That's it. This comes from the desperation that they recognize because they're losing. They're losing on the public front. People are starting to recognize what's going on. Do you understand? They're just grasping at straws. They're just trying to grab onto anything and everything they can.
So here's what happened. When I first sat down with Kilmar, we just had glasses of water on the table. I think maybe some coffee. And as we were talking, one of the government people came over and deposited 2 other glasses on the table with ice, and I don't know if it was salt or sugar around the top, but they look like margaritas. And if you look at the one they put in front of Kilmar, it actually had a little less liquid than the one in front of me, to try to make it look, I assume, like he drank out of it. Let me just be very clear. Neither of us touched the drinks that were in front of us. And if you want to play a little Sherlock Holmes, I'll tell you how you can know that. So if you look at the video or the picture I sent out from the beginning of our meeting, you'll see there are no glasses on the table. So you'll see in later videos they are on the table. But they made a little mistake. First, some people are very careful, right?
This is bad Hasbara, exactly. They're doing Israel shit. That's what they're doing. It reminds me of a desperate but violent state that is actively trying to do anything and everything they can to disparage the people that they are torturing, okay? And those who demand an end to said torture.
If you sip out of one of those glasses, some of whatever it was, salt or sugar.
Additionally ironic because Nayib Bukele is Palestinian, by the way. I hate to recognize that and I hate to admit that, but he is probably the worst Palestinian on the planet, but
would disappear. You would see a gap.
yeah, people don't know that Nayib Bukele is literally Palestinian.
Nobody drank any margaritas or sugar water or whatever it is. But this is a lesson into the lengths that President Bukele will do to deceive people about what's going on. And it's also shows the lengths that the Trump administration and the president will go to, because when he was asked about a reporter about this, he just went along for the ride. So the White House and the president had been lying about this case from the beginning, from the Supreme Court to the...
Yeah, look at this. Hey, Chris Van Hollen, I went ahead and changed your office plaque for you. Chris Van Hollen, senator from El Salvador. Oh my God, they're so stupid. That's the other thing. They're doing like a bunch of AI art to be like, oh, he wants to kiss and make out. He wants to make out with the MS-13 gang member. He wants to have gay sex with the MS-13 gang member. LOL. And these are like 65-year-old, 75-year-old adults, okay? No self-respect, no decency whatsoever. Oh, we're epically owning these people.
Si se puede, si se puede. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
It's good to be home. Now we need to end the illegal abduction of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and bring him home too. We're joined by his wife, Jennifer, by his mother, Cecilia, by his brother, Cesar, and thank all of the rest of you who are joining us in solidarity with the Constitution and Kilmar. Look, I'm a little sleep deprived, and I want to be as clear as possible about what this is about and what it's not about. So I'm going to read the remarks that I wrote on the plane ride home. As the federal courts have said, we need to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia home to protect his constitutional rights to due process. And it's also important that people understand this case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States.
Yes, yes.
If you deny the constitutional rights of one man, you threaten the constitutional rights and due process for everyone else in America.
Yes. Thank
The
you.
Fourth Circuit put it very clearly in its strong opinion yesterday, and I quote, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case, it is not hard at all. The government, in this case the Trump administration, is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims, in essence, that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense
Yeah,
of
I will talk
liberty
about the liberals
that
going
Americans
crazy, too.
far removed from the courthouses still hold dear."
No, Kilmar is not back on U.S. soil, but Senator Chris Van Hollen's efforts, at the very least, move the needle in the direction of inevitably bringing him back to U.S. soil, to his family, to his friends, to his coworkers, to his brothers in the union. Okay? He has MS-13 knuckle tattoo. I know. Every knucklehead on the planet is coming in and going, he has a MS-13 knuckle tattoo. It's like, who? No. What the fuck are you talking about? He's outside CCOT now. He's in another prison that's less insane. You want to know something that is hilarious about the knuckle tattoo situation? The ICE agents, if he truly had knuckle tattoos initially that suggested MS-13 gang affiliation, would have put that in the report. That's it. They wouldn't have run around for the past week or so. The defenders of this deportation regime wouldn't have been running around being like, well, he's wearing a Chicago Bulls hat, even though he lived in Maryland. Clearly, he's MS-13. They would have started off with that, don't you think? It was never even on any of the, it was never even presented as evidence. MS-13 is super tatted up, okay? If you're MS-13, you're tatted up. People don't necessarily hide that they're MS-13 affiliated, okay? The idea that, like, the Department of Homeland Security failed the precursory analysis of his tattoos for multiple years at this point, only to recognize them after the administration openly admitted that they wrongfully deported this man to El Salvador, after a previous immigration court judge said that he specifically is not MS-13 and is in threat. He is under threat by MS-13. If he were to be deported to El Salvador, he would most likely get killed. The idea that, like, all of those things happen, but magically now he has MS-13 knuckle tattoos is ridiculous. Also, guess what, dude? Due process. This is why due process is a necessity. I know it has 300,000 likes on Twitter. It does not matter. The president can just lie about whatever the fuck he wants to, and people will just eat it up.
They summed up the issue at stake perfectly. And that's why the Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia. Now, the Trump administration wants to flat out lie about what this case is about. They want to change the subject. They want to make it about something else. And they are flouting the orders from the Federal District Court, the Fourth Circuit Court, and the Supreme Court to facilitate his return. That's why I traveled to El Salvador, leaving here on Wednesday. And I want to express my gratitude to members of my family and members of my staff who agree that we all must be prepared to take risks because of the current risk to our Constitution itself. In addition to having a variety of discussions on bilateral issues between the United States and El Salvador, I had two main goals. One was to urge the government of El Salvador not to be complicit in the illegal abduction and detention of Mr.
Serious question. Since when has it been illegal to just be in a gang? That's actually a really good question. And it also shows that we have completely lost sight of how these things are supposed to be. You're not wrong. It is technically, and I know people will lose their minds when I say this, it's not illegal to be gang affiliated. Okay? It's entirely dependent on what your affiliation is. It's entirely dependent on what kind of investigation has been conducted and what kind of facilitation of gang activity that you've participated in. So yes, it is technically not even illegal to be in a gang, which is so crazy to say because when those words even come out of my mouth, okay? When those words even come out of my mouth, it's like it comes across like I'm living in a separate planet here. Like people will hear that and go, "What the f are you talking about?" Of course it is. No, it's not. It's illegal to do a crime. It's kind of a goofy point, to be fair. It's not. It's not. It's not even a goofy point. It's actually a very serious point. And the larger consideration here is how far we've moved the needle away from like what due process used to look like and what the criminal justice system used to look like. Now, this is just for the United States of America, okay? And considering that there is now a vague terrorism designation for the MS-13 gang and Tren de Aragua, it doesn't even matter, obviously, especially because these are deportation proceedings. So there is a lower bar to clear. But the government has even lowered that bar further by claiming everyone is a terrorist without any due process whatsoever. So, you know, we've if initially the argument was like, well, hold up, you could just say anyone and everyone is a gang member if you think that that's appropriate for any kind of criminal proceeding, you're wrong. To the government can say whoever they want is a terrorist and there is no investigation in that process. There's no due process whatsoever, and they can just deport you. It is insane.
Abrego Garcia, and to release him. I made that request directly to the Vice President of El Salvador. The president was out of country at the time, and I had previously reported on that conversation. My principal mission was to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I told his wife...
Yes, Hell's Angels would be a great example of this, except the Trump administration likes Hell's Angels. They consider them to be a white gang. That's why the Trump movement in general will always be like, Hell's Angels are going to go to battle. They fantasize about the Hell's Angels like protecting America, not realizing that half the Hell's Angels are also Latino, but that's besides the point. And they're not white at all. And they consider Hell's Angels to be an American gang, an honorable gang, a gang that's going to fight against Tren de Aragua. That's the fantasy. Remember when they were hallucinating about, all them, when they were hallucinating about the Aurora, Colorado apartment complex situation, claiming that Tren de Aragua had overtaken a apartment complex. They were fantasizing about they were fantasizing about how Hell's Angels are moving into Aurora, Colorado to fight the Tren de Aragua gangs.
Wife Jennifer and his family that I would do everything in my power to make that happen.
Yeah, look.
And last night,
fact check, video does not show Hell's Angels riding to Colorado in August 2024.
8:45 p.m. here on the East Coast. I called
Hell's Angels on their way to Aurora, Colorado to help clean up the apartments being invaded by illegals from Valenzuela. Valenzuela, baby. Raise hell. Praise Dale. The difference is that they're white. No, they're not even white. They're not even white.
Called Jennifer to tell her that I had met with Kilmar. And I told her what he said to me, which was first and foremost that he missed her and his family. And as he said that, you could see a tear go down his...
He looks back here and she's on the other side. And the Republicans literally zoomed in on this to be like, he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife. He doesn't even know what she looks like. This is all a sham. And they cut it before he actually found her in the background. Like, I saw so many clips, dude. God damn, the timeline is so polluted with like the dumbest shit. I swear to God. Oh, it's so stupid.
Now, getting a meeting with Kilmar was not easy. On Wednesday, I met with the Vice President of El Salvador and asked if I could meet with him. The answer was no. I asked if I returned the following week whether I could meet with him. The answer was no. I asked if I could call him on the phone. The answer was no. I asked if his wife Jennifer could call him on the phone. The answer was no. No to his wife, no to his mother, no to his lawyer.
Please let this go. He is a gang member, not a U.S. citizen. Move on to better things like Free Luigi the American. Wait, what? Why did the inner city press say he moved to Santa Ana? Please let this go. He is not a citizen. There are bigger things to fight for. For example, fight for justice for Luigi, not an illegal gang member. Shit like this makes me want to quit on the spot. I swear to God, dude. Land back, land back, land back. Land back, though. Land back. I swear to God. I don't even know what's going on here. What about Native American people? This citizenship talk is so juvenile. Native Americans are only birthright citizens. His ancestors walked into this land and got citizenship that way. What a clown. Chatter. I feel like you need to go back to the bot farm that you came from. What the Hey guys, not a federal agent here. Definitely just a liberal. I love screaming land back and then turning around and being like, immigrants should be falsely smeared as terrorists and I will believe them, and simultaneously demand, like, how can you be like pro Native American rights and then demand land back while simultaneously being like, and Kilmar Abrego Garcia should be executed in CCOT? Like, do you think we couldn't see your previous takes in the chat? What's going on here? What bot farm? I am a Cali. That was speaking about Native American land back. I'm a Cali Native American. A Native American that's pro Luigi Mangione, but also pro white nativist immigration is hilarious. Okay, well then you are perhaps the dumbest person. If you're not, me assuming that you're a federal agent here was actually in your favor. I thought that you had, something going on up here, and it wasn't just like a bunch of quarters, nickels, and dimes just rattling off in there in a tin can. White nativist, Native American is hilarious. It feels like a bit. Lol, bro, you are so confused. I am real. You will not call me dumb to my face, bro. No, I will. I promise you I will. I am right now. I'm telling you right now, you are very dumb. On the one hand, you're saying land back to Native Americans. On the other hand, you're saying America's white nativist policies and reactionary propaganda is totally valid and effective on me, a Native American who wants land back. How the have you never heard from anyone? No one is illegal on stolen land. Basic concepts. Hashtag Native Americans for genocide. Hashtag Native Americans for white nativism. This has to be a bit. No, there are people like this. Yes, there are reactionary Native Americans as well. It's just funny that it exists. It's very stupid. Hey, you the one who prostitutes from a brothel which was raided for human trafficking? No. I hope this helps. The answer is no, but I'm pretty sure you knew that already. But thank you. Thank you for asking. I assume now that you know the truth, you will go, oh, my bad. Perhaps. Hasan, why do you refuse to have or engage with Ukrainians on your streams? Because you talk about the importance of hearing opinions of people and receiving their end of the war, and yet you continue to ignore them? That's not true. The fuck? One, I have had Ukrainians on the stream before, and secondly, I have there was a dude who was a part of the Ukrainian Defense Forces that wanted to come on, but he never followed up. I was actually excited. We made sure that he was like he was the real deal. But yeah, of course I would have I would have Ukrainians on the stream. Why wouldn't I? Stop wasting your time on disingenuous chatter trying to distract you from the subject matter. I know. Yeah. I wanted to have the #1 lover of Ukraine on the stream. His name is Ryan Ruth. Free Ryan Ruth, the political prisoner.
So the following day, which was yesterday, I decided to give it another try by driving to Sikot. Sikot is the notorious prison where Kilmar was taken when he was abducted. I was accompanied by a lawyer for Kilmar's wife Jennifer and mother Cecilia, Chris Newsom.
You can find me on Twitter, dude. I barely discovered you, law. Okay, well, you're still stupid. I'm sorry. If you literally are eating away, if you are personally a Native American with multiple degrees you're failing to comprehend why I'm calling you stupid. I'm saying your position is stupid, okay? If you are Native American, as you claim, you know better than anybody else what white supremacy and white nativist policies look like, since your ancestors were ethnically cleansed by the Anglo-Saxon settlers. Okay? How can you not follow that logical through line to its inevitable conclusion of a random Salvadoran man who has come to U.S. soil to work an honest job and marry an American citizen, have a child here? How can you turn around and be like, nah, this guy's actually a MS-13 gang member? No, it's not. He is an illegal, point blank, period. He did not get sent there for no reason. Yes, he did. He did get sent there for no reason. You are so stupid. Oh my God. Would you ever collab with a Mexican? Or do you just eat our food, al pastor? I collab with a Mexican every day. His name is Mauricio, also known as March. I think some chatters think he's actually Asian now because we meme about that all the time. Authentico. Yeah. Anyway, I will respect his race change to Asian. Anyway, stop giving your Twitter out. Oh my God, you're too stupid to understand how the internet works, I think. Listen, chatter. When the Anglo-Saxon hordes of settlers came on to your ancestral homeland, the justification for wiping out your great-great-great-great-grandparents were identical to the justifications that you are recirculating in this chat. That this person has no right to be here. This person is violent. This person has done violence. He's a gang member. It is a modernized version of the manifest destiny white nativist arguments made. This is the tragic irony that you fail to comprehend. This is why I'm calling you stupid. If you're actually a Native American who is eating the white nativist anti-immigrant propaganda, you're a little dumb. I'm sorry. Please reconsider your stance, okay? The very same people, the very same groups, and the very same ideology that called your ancestors savages that must be purged from this land that will belong to the Anglo-Saxon Protestants are the very same groups now saying the exact same thing. It's the same it's the same ideology. If you cannot comprehend this, I don't know what to tell you. This is the point, okay? Whether I assume that you're a federal agent or not is irrelevant, okay? That's more so just a meme.
About 3 kilometers outside of Sikot, we were pulled over by soldiers.
And it is not just Kilmar Abrego Garcia that is falsely deported. The reason why we are talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia is because out of the 90% of all people that have been deported to Sikot thus far that have no criminal record whatsoever, he was the only one that the federal government accidentally admitted a mistaken deportation on. He literally said, or the federal government's immigration attorney accidentally revealed in a moment of honesty that they had f***ed up. That's it. That is why this is a story. The reason why this is a story, despite the fact that it is simply the tip of the iceberg, okay? The reason why this is a story, in spite of the fact that it's only the tip of the iceberg, is because of that reason. Because it's such an obvious error, and it's so cruel and so uniquely unjustifiable that even Democrats are basically running on with this and actively campaigning against it. No, lol, teach me. I don't know the internet like that. My bad. I'm a regular person, and I do not think you can comprehend that gang life in Mexico and El Salvador is really bad. I'm against human trafficking, etc. How did he get here? I did not see this was an accident. Where is that? I mean, I've been covering it nonstop. Maybe if you stop chirping in the chat and just listen to what I was saying, you would understand that this person not only was mistakenly sent to El Salvador, the federal government openly admitted that that was a mistake that they sent to El Salvador, which is precisely the reason why this is actually an active conversation that's taking place right now with Senator Chris Van Hollen going all the way down to El Salvador to try to at least get proof of life, which he successfully did. Stop believing the lies that the government tells you. Oh my God. Every single person that's like, I'm the biggest skeptic, I think all politicians lie to you, eat up the anti-immigrant propaganda, hook, line, and sinker. It is shocking, okay? It is shocking how little healthy skepticism they demonstrate against certain narratives that correspond to the ideology that's baked into their minds. White supremacy, white nativism, despite being a Native American, apparently.
You could see the rest of the traffic was allowed to go by. We were pulled over by soldiers and told that we were not allowed to proceed any farther. When I asked why, I was told that they had orders not to allow us to go any further.
Yeah, add insult to injury. Him being originally from El Salvador means that he also has indigenous roots. This is part of the reason why the government is like actively using him, or part of the reason why the government nabbed him from the streets. Okay, his indigenous roots come in the form of his brown skin, which ironically is part of the reason why the ICE Gestapo agents nabbed him off the street. Okay, not because he was a threat to anybody, but simply for that reason. So being a native yourself, you should probably understand that better than anybody else. Holy f***.
When I asked them if they knew anything about the condition of Mr. Abrego Garcia, they said no. And so much later in the afternoon, I was actually getting ready to catch a plane out of San Salvador back here later yesterday evening. And all of a sudden, I got word that I would be allowed to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And they
I don't have much knowledge about Bukele, but he seems to be quite popular within El Salvador. Why do we have a problem with him? Genuinely curious. I'm not very knowledgeable about the issue. He is very popular in El Salvador, at least for now. Okay? But you know who's very popular despite being a belligerent right-wing monster? Donald Trump. His popularity has only seemingly started to wane as of the last month or so, even though he's done like horrible things, and that's barely put a dent in his popularity, his approval ratings, as opposed to his first term. That's it. Popularity in this case does not necessarily mean it's right. I mean, Hitler was popular with the Germans. Franco was popular. Donald Trump is popular. Vladimir Putin is popular. This doesn't mean that they're correct.
Hotel where I was staying. And after that meeting, as I said, I called his wife, Jennifer, to report on some of the news of that meeting. And now I'm going to report to all of you about our discussion. When I told him that his wife and family sent their love and were fighting for Kilmar to return home every day, he said that he was worried about all of you. That was his response. How are you dealing with this horrible ordeal and nightmare for the family? He said that thinking of you, members of his family, is what gave him the strength to persevere, to keep going day to day, even under these awful circumstances. He spoke several times about your 5-year-old son who has autism. 5-year-old son who was in the car in Maryland when Kilmar was pulled over by U.S. government agents and handcuffed. His 5-year-old son was in the car at that time. He told me that he was taken to Baltimore first. I assume that was the Baltimore Detention Center. He asked to make a phone call from there to let people know what had happened to him. But he was denied that opportunity. He said he was later taken with some others from Baltimore to a detention center in Texas. And some point thereafter, I don't know whether it was a period of hours or days, he was handcuffed, shackled, and put on a plane along with some others where they couldn't see out of the windows. There was no way to see where they were going in the plane. They didn't know for sure where they were going. They landed in El Salvador, and he was taken to CCOT prison. He was placed in a cell with, if I recall correctly, and don't hold me to it, of about 25 other prisoners at CCOT. He said he was not afraid of the other prisoners in his immediate cell, but that he was traumatized by being at CCOT and fearful of many of the prisoners in other cell blocks who called out to him and taunted him in various ways. He told me, and this was yesterday, that 8 days ago, so I guess 9 days ago from today, he was moved to another detention center in Santa Ana, where the conditions are better. But he said despite the better conditions, he still has no access to any news from the outside world and no ability to communicate with anybody in the outside world. His conversation with me was the first communication he'd had with anybody outside of prison since he was abducted. He said he felt very sad about being in a prison because he had not committed any crimes.
Yeah, the CCOT facility is such a horrible facility that even the American government acknowledges its atrocities, the atrocious conditions. I would go so far as to say that the Trump administration is using CCOT specifically for that purpose as well, because it is a horrible, it's a prison that has worse conditions than the American prisons. It is a concentration camp. And I have long detailed the exact reasons as to why this administration is using CCOT and this deportation regime to inevitably ship away anyone and everyone they claim to be a terrorist for exercising dissent, their First Amendment rights, and tackling all of those issues. They're using multiple different court battles at the same time and trying to see how far they can take this, basically stress testing the system and what remains of the institutional control, what remains of the separation of powers, in an effort to write new rules, create new precedents, so they can legally, in air quotes, create this deportation regime. It's on the one hand, with the likes of Mahmoud Khalil, they're looking at basically taking away people's green card and legal permanent residency for the crime of their free speech. They want to criminalize free speech to the best of their ability for non-citizens first, documented legal permanent residents first, and then they will inevitably move to recently naturalized citizens. Then they'll inevitably move to naturalized citizens across the board. Then they'll inevitably move to natural-born U.S. citizens. These are things that the Trump administration has actively talked about. Okay? They also simultaneously need to erode due process. And if the courts respond to that, they need to violate court orders. They want to destroy the persuasive power that the highest court in the United States of America has, completely eviscerating the separation of powers so that no one can stand in their way. Part of that also means you have to eliminate dissent and any sort of legal battles that you might see. And a way to do that is to go to all of the largest law firms in the country and actively target them to make sure that they play ball, so that any law firm that has federal that works in the federal court system cannot go into federal property. That's a thing that the Trump administration did. And I don't want to say quietly did that. They openly did it, right? With an executive order. But the problem was, Bud, you literally read like a Fed courting a 15-year-old boy on a 4chan board? What are you talking about? I don't know who you're referencing in the chat. I will watch it later, but dude, it was real. Why are reports saying he's a gang member? I'm not a Fed or a racist. What the fuck? Why do people think I'm a Fed? That's crazy. It's because you're saying such unimaginably stupid things while also maintaining your native background that people see that juxtaposition and assume that you must be cynically saying these sorts of things because you're being paid by the federal government to actively agitate in the chat, like COINTELPRO style. Okay, that's why. It's because they're trying to ascribe some semblance of intellect to your brain, because what you're saying is so stupid and is so nonsensical with someone of your background, if you're being honest, that people are like, oh, this must be someone who is actively trying to sow dissent. Initially, it was a joke, and I don't think you're a federal agent at all. I think you were just kind of silly. But the reason why people think you're a Fed is because you're so goddamn clueless that people are like, this must be someone who hasn't had their brain erased and smoothened out by Fox News, but instead is like, there's a sign of life in there, you know? This is not like a vegetable. There's a sign of life in there, so there must be a secondary reason as to why they're behaving this way, you know? That's why people are calling you a Fed. Baba, geldi. Anyway, I'm done responding to this person. In chat, you should also stop responding to this person, please. They should just kick back and listen to my words. All right?
When I asked him what was the one thing he would ask for in addition to his freedom, he said he wanted to talk to his wife, Joe. I told him I would work very hard to make that happen. I told him that in addition to his family, that all of you who are here today were fighting to bring him home. I told him that his brothers and sisters in his union, the sheet metal workers union, were fighting to bring him home. That brought a smile to his face. I told him that millions of Americans understand that what is happening to him is a threat to their own constitutional rights. I told him about the decisions of the federal courts, the district court, the Fourth Circuit Court, the Supreme Court. And I think that in addition to knowing that his family was fighting for him, all of that gave him strength. The fact that all of you here were fighting for him. I want to say something about the Trump administration's efforts to change the conversation about what this case is about. This case is about upholding constitutional rights for Abrego Garcia and for every American. The President Trump and the Trump administration wants to say that those who are fighting to stand up for our Constitution don't want to fight gang violence. That is an outright lie. That is a big, big lie. I, for one, have been fighting against transnational gang violence, especially MS-13, for over 20 years. Probably for longer than Donald Trump ever uttered those words, MS-13. Over 20 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, look, I'm going to move on from these statements, but like, if you want to understand how incompetent this goddamn government is, here's an American doctor that received an email from immigration officials telling her to leave the country immediately, and she's not the only one. If you recall, a couple of days ago, an immigration attorney stated on the timeline that her wife had gotten this exact notice of termination of parole on the same date, April 11th. Initially, I was like, I don't know if there is validity to this, or I don't know if what happened here, right? Because it seemed so ridiculous that the federal government would actively do an email mass blast out to random people who are American citizens on accident of a notice of termination of parole. Except that is real. That is what happened. The government is basically doing like scam phishing emails at this point.
Time for you to leave the United States. That's the first sentence Lisa Anderson saw in an email she got from the Department of Homeland Security Friday.
The language seems pretty threatening to whoever it might actually apply to.
She thought it was spam at first, but the email was very real after Anderson had it vetted. What created confusion is that Anderson, who's a physician and lives in Cromwell, was born in Pennsylvania and is a U.S. citizen.
I really have no idea how my email ended up on that list unless someone else was using that as a false email.
She now carries her passport on the advice of attorneys and is looking for representation from an actual immigration attorney worried about legal repercussions, something she never thought she would ever need.
I don't have anything to do with immigration, and I never thought that I would be needed the services of an immigration attorney either, and that's where I find myself.
This comes just days after 2 Boston immigration attorneys got the same email.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about, the Boston
from
email.
DHS, despite being U.S. citizens themselves. A senior DHS official telling our sister station, NBC Boston, that Customs and Border Protection has been sending these emails to people who do not have lawful status in the U.S., saying, quote, if a non-personal email, such as an American citizen contact, was provided by the alien, notices may have been sent to unintended recipients. CBP is monitoring communications and will address any issues on a case-by-case basis. Anderson is warning anyone who may have gotten the emails to take them seriously and get legal help.
It does make me concerned that there's a lot more people out there like me who probably also thought this was spam, who probably don't realize that they might have a problem.
Yeah. They're sending mass blast emails because we are run by the most incompetent charlatans of all time. They're sending mass blast emails to American citizens saying like you're going to get deported. Okay. They're doing the shittiest slop job of Photoshop here, which I guess you could say is simply to suggest that these tattoos are MS-13 tattoos, but it doesn't even matter because the audience is so goddamn stupid that they now believe that he has tattoos that say MS1 and 3 on his knuckles. And the initial meme, I guess, of this being MS-13 originally came from a New York Post article that basically just took a neo-Nazi statement as facts from this original photo. Obviously, this is a stupid version of this, but like they saw this, okay? They saw his knuckles. And then they started claiming that these were MS-13 tattoos. Some white supremacist account said this was MS-13 tattoos. Okay? And now that white supremacist baseless speculation, is now in the hands of the bully pulpit and being used as a justification. That's how insane this situation is.
Our ABC News exclusive. Joining us now is Jennifer Vasquez-Sierra, wife of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador and is at the center of a legal battle playing out in the courts. And Jennifer, we want to thank you for joining us this morning on GMA.
Yeah, they said the marijuana leaf is an M, the smiley face is the S, the cross is a 1, and the skull is a 3. That's what they're saying.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we really appreciate you joining us. And we saw that Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, he flew to see your husband Wednesday. He released a photo of the two of them last night. What was it like for you to see that photo?
It was very overwhelming. The most important thing for—
How would a skull be a 3 and a cross a 1? Dude, it doesn't matter. It's not chatters. It's all bullshit. That's my point. It's not. There is no logic behind it beyond I said so, and now the president is also saying so. It's kind of similar to Israel claiming Hamas-run health ministry. Their numbers are fake in the aftermath of the El Ahly hospital courtyard bombing. that Israel also claimed initially was Hamas, and then they said it was Palestinian Islamic Jihad. No evidence that they presented was actually real in the process. And then the Biden administration came out and said the exact same things. And then lo and behold, once Biden said it, the media ran with it aggressively. It's just the same thing happening right now. The exact same thing happening right now. They're just grabbing onto whatever they can to disparage victims in this process.
For me, my children, his mom, his brother, his sibling, was to see him alive. And we saw him alive.
Yeah.
It was very, very overwhelming.
Yeah, I think for all of us, we were all happy.
Yeah, by the way, this already happened against Haitian immigrants. Documented temporary protected status recipient Haitian migrants living in Ohio were falsely smeared as stealing cats and dogs and eating them. Remember? And then what did they do? They just kept doubling down over and over again. J.D. Vance literally said, straight up openly admitted, even if we are embellishing a little bit, it's good because it's getting people to focus on the stories that we want to tell. Those guys won the election. That's where we're at. So the expectation was going to be different once they're in office is silly, you know? Anne yine bir şey mi aldın? Ne? Ne alıyorsun? Okay. Dur, hayır, text attım kodu. My mom is buying stuff on my debit card.
To see him alive. And what were you told your husband said in that meeting?
Can you repeat your question? I'm sorry.
What were you told your husband said in that meeting?
It was just a message of love.
So tell me a little bit about your husband. How long have you two been together, and what has your life been like with him?
We've been together over 7 years. It's been amazing. He's very a loving husband, an amazing father.
No.
And we were just young parents trying to live the American dream.
And we know you were living that dream until March 12th. That's when your husband was detained and sent back to El Salvador. Can you tell us what happened as you
I find a recent smear of Jill Stein using the lib talking point. Where is she reprehensible? It's not a lib talking point. It's my talking point, and I'm not a liberal. She has been organizing many pro-Palestine protests, and you linked her Twitter activity as some gotcha when it's more radically pro-Palestine than yours is, let alone AOC. Yeah, you're right. Jill Stein is more pro-Palestine than me. You're totally correct.
Understand it, and how did you learn about his detainment?
It's just crazy because I was on April 5th. On April 5th, I was at the march. I didn't see her there. Maybe she was. I'm serious. Maybe she was there. Maybe she was busy setting up the next protest or something.
Yes, it's been 37 days since March 12th, since my husband was abducted. It's been an emotional roller coaster, honestly. But just knowing right now that he's alive, you know, that day he was with our 5-year-old child, and we've continued, our faith has grown, and I keep him in my prayers to bring him back home.
And how did you learn that he was detained?
He made a phone call to me, and what we thought was a regular traffic stop was not a regular traffic stop.
And we know that the administration, they're resisting a court order to bring your husband back to the U.S. They say your husband's a member of the MS-13 gang. Is he a member of the MS-13 gang or any other gang?
No, he's not.
And I know this is a sensitive question, but I have to ask it. You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
My husband is alive. That's all I can say.
Okay, and I'm not going to push on that apparently. But how much hope do you have that you
What the fuck?
fear of your husband? Okay.
Yeah. Also, because of the delay that they had in this interview, look at this. Look at these guys. When I say they're grasping at any straw they can, this is what I mean. Look at this. 57,000 likes, bro.
You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
My husband is alive. That's all I can say.
Okay. And I'm not going to push on that, apparently.
There's massive delay, and she's barely picking up what he's putting down the entire time from the start of the interview. But if you cut it for the in a beautifully cut 24-second clip, if you clip it out of context, without ever considering why she would literally demand the return, like the question in and of itself is you might think the question in and of itself is stupid, right? Sean the Black, thank you for the raid. Hope you had a good stream. You might think the question in and of itself is stupid. It's not. The reason why he's asking that question is because he wants her to respond to it to counter the narrative that's out there. Okay? That's the reason why he's asking that question. Because everyone is claiming that this is this guy's a wife beater or whatever. And it's ridiculous because she has already given numerous quotes on this. In a Newsweek exclusive, she talked about it a couple days ago when Newsweek reached out to her originally about the administration releasing this restraining order that she had filed. And so her having this back and forth here and not really understanding what he's saying because of, I assume, audio issues and the delay, as you can see in all of her answers, was enough for the End Wokeness account to blast this and to make it seem like this woman, who is for the past couple of weeks actively and prominently demanding the return of her husband, actually is secretly excited that her husband was deported because he is a wife beater, a domestic abuser. This does not make any sense. If she was excited that he was deported, don't you think that she would at least not say anything about it? Why would she be even entertaining these interviews? Why would she even go out? If she was like, yeah, this is a bad guy and a gang member and a wife beater to put the cherry on top, why the fuck is she like, yeah, this bad guy who's a gang member who's also beating me all the time, I want him to come back?
And I'm not going to push on that, apparently. But how much hope do you have that you're going to be reunited with your husband? And what keeps you and your family going?
A lot of hope. And
like, she misunderstood the question. I think he was like, are you in fear of your husband's conditions? Because it doesn't make sense how she responded to it.
And this fight still continues for Kilmar, for all the other Kilmars out there whose voice haven't been heard yet. I won't stop fighting until he returns home, until I know that he's safe.
And if you could get your husband a message, what would you like to tell him right now?
I will tell him that I love him, and I'm gonna still keep praying for him until he returns, and I will continue fighting the community.
And she can't say she wasn't afraid because that would make her perjuring herself from back when she applied the protective order. No, she already has said that. And no, she wouldn't be perjuring herself at all. Here, I'll give you the Newsweek quote. Does anyone have it, chatter? Does any chatter have the Newsweek quote that she gave? No, that's not how it works. Conditions change, chatters. You're wrong. And ABC News itself, I guess, added context to her answers here. But here, this is it. This is what I was talking about. Exclusive. Abrego Garcia's wife responds after a restraining order revealed. In an exclusive statement in Newsweek, Vasquez Sura responded to the DHS release of court filings. Okay. The documents included her 2021 request for a protective order in which she accused her husband of punching and scratching her, ripping her shirt, and leaving her bruised. Temporary order barred Abrego Garcia from contacting her and directed him not to harass or abuse her, according to the filings. This was in 2021. So why is she in 2025 demanding the return of this supposedly abusive person? Well, here's what the reasoning was. After surviving domestic abuse violence in a previous relationship, I acted out of caution following a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a civil protective order in case things escalated. Things did not escalate, and I decided not to follow through with the civil court process. We were able to work through the situation privately as a family, including by going to counseling. Our marriage only grew stronger in the years that followed. No one is perfect, and no marriage is perfect, but that is not a justification for ISIS's action of abducting him and deporting him to a country where he was supposed to be protected from removal. Kilmar has always been a loving partner and a father, and I will continue to stand by him and demand justice for him, the statement adds. So why is it that nobody cares about this and they're grasping at fucking straws? It's because they want to create propaganda surrounding the issue. Okay? They want to create propaganda. They want to basically fight on numerous fronts, flood the market with as much misinformation as possible so that they can justify the administration's actions after the fact.
The U.S. Supreme Court says it will...
The tattoos, the hand tattoos, knuckle tattoos, play the exact same role. The knuckle tattoos were so insignificant, so inconsequential that they were never once revealed in any of the numerous times that Obrego Garcia has gone through the court process, through the immigration court process. Do you understand? And it's the same as the rolls of money. Remember, Pam Bondi, the attorney general, and the administration came out and said that they found him with rolls of money when they actually detained him. It turns out he did not have rolls of money on him at all, as a matter of fact, but instead they misread the detention report that stated that he was wearing a hoodie that had rolls of money with wings on it. They're so stupid and so goddamn desperate. And if you believe them, you are a stupid, desperate person too. Hasan Reaction is one of the best ones in the React channel.